All right. Okay, I think we're cooking now. Let's see. There we go.
Perfect.
Co-host. Okay, so you should be the co-host now. Try and share your screen now. If it still doesn't work, I'll just make you like the full-on host.
Let's see. Is it this one? Can you see anything yet?
Not quite yet. There should be like a little green button on the bottom of the screen that has like a little.
Yeah, there's a bunch of choices that are coming up, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I think this is the one. Let's try. Oh, it says allow Zoom to share your screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can just click allow.
I have to do, there we go. Oh, it says Zoom will not be able to share the contents of your screen until it is quit.
I don't know what that means. Okay, hold on. Let me try and make you the host. Okay, so you're the host now, Melissa. Try it again now.
Okay.
Try and like X out whatever you had, and then try now.
Now, let's see. Oh, there we are. There.
Yay!
Okay. Let me just get rid of this. Oh, did it go away?
Nope, I can still see it.
Still there. Okay.
Perfect. Yay!
Perfect.
Awesome. Teamwork.
So, whoops. Let me just do this.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right.
Wonderful. There we go.
Nice. Good. I'm excited. Glad we figured that out. I started to sweat a little bit.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I
was like, please let there not be any technical difficulties.
Yes, I know. That's always that's the one downfall of doing things online.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we had
can be unpredictable.
Yes, absolutely. You're totally right. We had our first day of conference week yesterday. And again, like the first session, there was a bit of technical difficulties, but our moderator handled it really well. She sent out a whole new Zoom link and like all that stuff. So we eventually troubleshoot and get around it, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's why we have us. So we're not leaving you guys out to dry.
Yeah.
We got you, don't worry.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So have you guys been pretty busy?
Yeah, it's been pretty busy. But it's not been too bad. Like we just have conferences all week this week, and then we go start our classes event again next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for a couple more weeks, and then we have our kind of a block of where we're supposed to have our placement, but unfortunately our placements were canceled this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I think they wanted to give a lot of the positions to hopefully the year 2 teacher candidates so they could graduate on time and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But instead we have our own time to kind of just do some other things that we have to do. Like we have to get certain hours for something called our alternative field experience.
Yeah.
People can do like tutoring or like like an independent study. Like they can do like courses, anything really. So we kind of instead of going on placement, we just have that like block of like a month to kind of just get those hours in and stuff. So it's not bad. We will figure it out.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
it's a busy time of year for many.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Sorry, you might hear some groans. I have a service dog, Freya,
Okay.
and she's right beside me, and
Aw.
she groans quite a bit, so you might hear her throughout the presentation.
Oh, no worries. I'm sure we all love dogs. We won't mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
It's nice the sun is shining a bit today.
Yes, I know. It always helps so much when the sun is out, right? Like I feel like it makes such a big difference.
Yeah, it really does.
Mhm.
Really does.
Mhm.
Just to make everything brighter.
Yeah, especially like shining off the snow too, right? It makes it so bright because the snow is like
Yeah.
so bright, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
I could do without the snow though.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
It's not so good for driving a wheelchair in.
Definitely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I know.
But you get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily Freya hasn't had to pull me yet.
Okay. That's
So
good.
hmm.
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely a summer person, so I feel that.
Yes, we are too. It's been hard to get out for our walks
I know.
as per usual due to the weather and you know, the pandemic and all of this crazy
Yeah.
stuff that's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Like all those
So,
factors kind of accumulate together and it kind of doesn't let you do anything, right?
no,
Yeah.
no.
Do you have a lot of snow where you're at, Melissa?
We
Okay.
do. It snowed quite a bit yesterday.
Yes, it has been
So we
snowing a lot, like in the past like 24 hours, like a lot of snow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we have tons. Freya actually had to hop through the snow today when I took her out. Because
No
there was
way.
so much, but she was loving her life.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing those videos and like TikToks and stuff of like dogs just like going out in the snow and like when there's a new snowfall, they're just like
Yeah.
going nuts. So funny.
Yeah.
So Melissa, do you have like a bit of an idea of what the session's going to look like today, or did you want me to give you a quick rundown?
Um, a little bit, but
Yeah.
you can just tell tell me again just so I know.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, we're just structuring it as in you have your presentation for about 45 minutes. And then the rest of the session, so for 20, 15 minutes, will be a Q&A period. And I'll do my
Okay.
best to monitor the questions. People will usually send them through the chat box,
Okay.
or some people might just come off mic and ask a question. And then you can answer your questions like that. And I'll do my best to make sure we get to everybody's question. But
Yeah,
yeah.
if you don't mind, I have trouble with the chat box.
Yeah, no worries. That's
So
what
if
I'm
you
here
can
for.
help me with that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't worry. And I will mention that all in my introduction once everybody's here too. So no worries.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
Yes, I know. I'm excited. Awesome. Still have a couple minutes here, so we'll wait a little bit longer. Usually a lot of people kind of join in those last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, no worries. Not to worry at all.
Sorry, Melissa, I'm just trying to check how many people we're expecting today to know about when we should start, you know? Just want to see how many people registered. Perfect. All right, so we have almost 100 people registered, so we've got about like 50 right now. I see the numbers are climbing though, so hopefully we can start shortly. I know, look at you.
That's awesome.
I know, you're basically a celebrity.
Oh, Freya will be the celebrity today.
Yes, yeah. We're fine with that too.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, I know it's about 9 o'clock. We're still missing a couple of participants, so we're just going to give them a few more minutes before we get started. All right, we're still missing a couple of people, but I wanted to give Melissa enough time to do her wonderful presentation. So I think we're going to get started here, if that's all right with everybody. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Conference Week Day 2. Just before we begin, I'll do a quick introduction here. So my name is Stephanie Gazarian, and I'm the current French program representative on ESC this year, and I will be your moderator for this session today. We'd like to start off by thanking our speaker, Melissa Brideau, for taking the time from their busy schedule to share their knowledge and expertise with us. So this session will include a 40-minute presentation followed by a 20-minute Q&A. So please turn your audio and video off for the duration of the presentation. And for the Q&A discussion, please use the chat box and I will do my best to monitor the questions from there. In case we don't have any questions, we will hand the session back over to Melissa to share any additional information regarding the topic being discussed. And finally, just as a reminder for all the TCs, make sure you fill out your Check for Understanding form, which you can find on the Teacher Candidate Conference Week website. So that's it from me, and I'm just going to turn it over to Melissa.
So, good morning, everyone. I hope you are all staying safe, healthy, and warm wherever it is that you might be. As Stephanie mentioned, my name is Melissa Brideau, and I'm both humbled and honored to be here with you today. I would like to take a moment before, I'm just trying to, there we go. Before getting into the actual content of my presentation, to tell you all a little bit more about myself so that I give some context to the stories about my educational experiences that I will be sharing throughout our time together today. So, I grew up in a very small rural town near Grand Bend, Ontario, by the name of Dashwood. Not too many people have heard of it or know where it is, but that's okay. And well, I can tell you that I had many wonderful educational experiences. Many of my stories today will illuminate some of the barriers that were present for me as a physically disabled student and are still a reality for many students with disabilities within our school systems. It is my intention today to briefly provide you with some information on disability theories, pertinent disability theories, and how they've evolved from impairment-centered to theories that were more holistic in nature, and ones that made an effort to consider other factors beyond an individual's characteristics that might influence their experience of disability. It is also my hope that I can demonstrate for you through theories that use the central tenets of social justice, how educators can gain increased insight and awareness in terms of working with people with disabilities so that they can feel as though their voices are being heard and as though they are recognized as valued members of their school communities. So before I get into all that, I could not let another moment pass without first introducing you to my wonderful partner in crime, my service dog, Freya. I was fortunate enough to be gifted with Freya 2.5 years ago, and my life has become so much better, and I'm so much more independent because of her. Freya assists me with tasks such as opening and closing doors, cupboards and drawers, picking up things that I've dropped, and pulling off clothing. Prior to the pandemic, she was heading to school with me almost every day. And now she's not able to. And I know she's quite sad about that because it means that she doesn't get as many treats. But nonetheless, she is the best co-presenter and author I could ask for. So I could not miss an opportunity to share her with all of you today. And you will hear more about Freya later in the presentation. I would first like to begin with an overview of the literature in terms of the barriers that students with disabilities face when trying to achieve academic success. However, first, I think that it is necessary to take a closer look at one of the earliest theories of disability and how it has influenced and shaped perspectives about disabled people within the realm of education. And so this is the medical model. The medical model has been around for several decades, and its influence has spanned far and wide. And many disciplines have used this model to inform best practices in working with people with disabilities. The central tenets of this model include a focus on individual characteristics. So essentially seeing disability or difference as a deficit. Medicalization, meaning that it was often the view of many that the medical community was the only arena capable of producing legitimate knowledge with regards to notions of disability and impairments. And as a result, we see the dichotomy between normal and abnormal, and that differences in individual or differences in physical or intellectual levels of functioning must be cured, or if they cannot be cured, they must be medically managed. Now this sort of binary thinking only serves to reinforce a culture of normalization. And so this is precisely why I've chosen to mention it here, because although the ideas, as well intended as they may be in terms of recognizing and acknowledging differences, they have unfortunately contributed to a lot of the barriers that students with disabilities face in many facets of their life, or encounter in many facets of their life, including the education system. So the literature in this area has predominantly focused on three types of barriers present for disabled folks. And so the first barriers we see are systematic barriers, which refer to policies and procedures that are designed to govern the day-to-day activities of students and staff. But what we see from the literature is that actually a lot of these practices cause many barriers for students with disabilities. An example of this is standardized testing, where this is an accountability measure where students are tracked and tested, but many students with disabilities are often withdrawn from this sort of testing, or withdrawn from this testing based on the level of their abilities or disabilities, as the case may be. And this is indeed a byproduct of neoliberalism, which can diminish aspirations for the common good and also place an overemphasis on the economy and personal interests. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this and mention a study that was done by Reza Rashti and Sigreen, where they looked at the pressures of school leaders to implement some of these reforms that were aimed at managing, measuring, and marketing the students, staff, and even the school itself. And what they found was not only that students in many, these reforms cause difficulties rather for students in many marginalized groups, but that it made it increasingly difficult for school leaders to find the resources necessary, namely time and money, to adequately address issues related to equity and social justice. So we see here that neoliberalism has had a massive impact on not only the work that schools do, but perhaps the most detrimental for students with disabilities has been the focus on individual responsibility, regardless of the circumstances that someone might be in, and that difficulties in education come as a result of an individual lacking capacity, or that they didn't put enough effort into school related activities. And such perspectives can be troubling on many levels. First, because they neglect to consider the layered experiences of students with disabilities, and also because they show a complete disregard for the pervasiveness and insidious nature of ableism. So, up next, I will be talking about attitudinal barriers. And yes, um, I couldn't resist another opportunity to show you a picture of Freya, but there is a method um, to why her picture is there, and I will talk about it in a minute. Um, so attitudinal barriers refer to negative attitudes held by students and staff within the school communities towards disabled individuals. Now, I have to tell you that out of all the barriers that I've experienced in my educational journey, these have been by far the hardest to navigate. And I'll get to the reason why I say that in a minute. But first, I wanted to share a story with you. There were several years during elementary school where school leaders and teachers thought that it would be best for me to be put in a special education class, a segregated special education class, because of my disability. Now, fortunately for me, I had the support of my incredible mother, who knew with every fiber of her being that I had the skills and abilities necessary to be within a regular classroom setting. Now, keep in mind, this was the early 90s, so this was the terminology being used. And even though my mother was very articulate in advocating for me at my IEP meetings every year, she was very educated and well informed of the issues. But nonetheless, this didn't make it any easier for her. She knew she would face quite a lot of pushbacks from school leaders and staff who felt that I would be unable to keep up with the other students. It wasn't until years later, actually, that I would know just how difficult these meetings were for her. And she actually shared with me that before every one of these meetings, she would be physically ill um, due to the nervousness that she felt. I have to tell you that I will always be grateful to my mother, because if it wasn't for her unconditional love, incredible bravery, strength, poise, and persistence, that there is no way I would be sitting here speaking to you all today. Another instance that occurred within my higher education journey happened with one of my classmates. Well, we were in the middle of a conversation that had nothing to do with my disability, but this classmate shared that until today, they didn't know that I could speak. And it was at that moment that I responded with a smile and a well surprise. And I tend to respond with humor in dealing with situations like this, as a way to cope with the frustration and the amount of emotional energy that it takes to navigate such situations. This brings me to my next point. Remember when I told you earlier that these types of barriers were by far the hardest to navigate? The reason is because on top of the workload I had as a post-secondary student, I also had to deal with, or had to tend to rather, another workload, and that is dealing with the ever-present effects of internalized ableism. And so for me, what this looks like is the shame and frustration I feel when I cannot keep up with my peers at the same pace when doing certain activities. In addition, I also grapple with the intense fear and anxiety that comes every time I must ask for accommodations, as I've often worried throughout my school career that educators will think that I'm lazy, lack motivation, or am simply taking advantage of their generosity. I also, on top of all of this, as I said, it takes an incredible amount of energy to deal with all of this, but also navigating my way around ableist structures, policies, and practices, as well as attitudes, has often come at a high cost to my emotional and psychological well-being. But on a brighter note, I feel that it is also important I share with you that I have been blessed with numerous sources of support. First, there's the informal support of my friends and family, which has served to help me maintain and strengthen my positive outlook, sense of humor, and resilient spirit. Secondly, there is the formal support that I have received from the many fabulous educators at the various institutions I've attended, as they help me to develop my confidence, both professionally and personally, as they were often the ones to see the light in me when I didn't see it in myself. And so that was really meaningful. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the one being again that has made my life infinitely better, Freya. Along with the physical assistance that I mentioned earlier, working and learning from Freya has taught me many valuable lessons. The first, she has taught me how to be unapologetically authentic, and that it's okay to rest when I need to rest, and that by continuing to learn and challenge myself, will lead a happier, more meaningful and fulfilled life. Last but not least, despite accessibility legislation being in place, there are still a multitude of environmental barriers that students with disabilities face and that impede their ability to fully participate in their school communities. I'm just going to tell you a couple of stories now to sort of illustrate that. One story comes from my high school where there was a ramp leading up to the front door of the high school. And so to enter the school, I had to go through a back door. Now, fortunately, due to my advocacy and willing to have open and honest communication with school leaders about how going through a back door made me feel isolated and that I wasn't a valued member of the school community. By the time I was leaving the school, they had begun the process to put a ramp at the front door. The second instance I can tell you from my high school was that because the school was 2 stories, I had to use an elevator to get to class on the 2nd floor. And while I was thankful the school had access to an elevator, I was also terrified every time I had to use it, as it often got stuck. In fact, I can tell you that this elevator got stuck so often that the school provided me with a cell phone to use. If I got stuck in the elevator, then I could call the office and somebody from the office would come to my rescue. Well, shortly after giving me the cell phone, the elevator got stuck once again. And I said, great, this time I don't need to panic. I will just call the office and somebody will be along shortly to assist me. Well, I went to use the cell phone and it wouldn't work because there was no service in the elevator. So I had to use my chair. There was only really enough room for my chair and a little bit of movement room. I had to use my chair to bang on the door until someone heard me. And thankfully, after about a half an hour, and what seemed like a lifetime, might I add, one of my classmates heard me and went to get some help. And yes, even though these situations were indeed frustrating, they taught me so many valuable lessons. First and foremost, I learned very early on that people have very different ideas of what accessibility actually means. As a result, the second skill I had to learn was how to strike a balance between assertively advocating for my needs while educating with kindness and compassion. And I knew it was really important for me rather to have a collaborative relationship with those who were working to eradicate accessibility concerns in my school communities. So I know that this has been a lot of information that I've just given you. So I would like to take this opportunity now to share some information about a model that you can use as a guidepost when you're trying to deal with challenges and issues in your respective school communities. And this is the social justice model. The social justice model has its roots in social justice movements that were common throughout the United States in the 60s and 70s, such as civil rights and the women's movement. It's important to note that the social justice model should be thought of as a paradigm rather than a theory, because one of the central tenets of this model is that it urges people to think about disability in relation to their own perspectives, beliefs, and values, instead of depending on a set of research data. Here, social justice is both a goal and a process whereby key tenets of social justice, such as access to resources, recognition, are used to critically examine individual, social, and institutional structures and cultures. This then allows for an unveiling of the privilege that exists within dominant groups or interests, and of the oppression that exists in non-dominant groups or interests. Further, the social justice model addresses diversity and the intersectionality of experiences, roles, and identities. The advantage of including intersectionality factors in this model is that by having multiple understandings of individuals and groups, this can counter the one-size-fits-all understandings of people with disabilities and the way that they work, study, or live. And it is also well suited for the field of education due to its advocacy potential. So, McKinnon and colleagues speak about elements in relation to disability that are important to consider when using a social justice model. So we are looking at supporting students with disabilities and educating students with and without disabilities on the pervasiveness and existence of disability oppression, and teaching them how to advocate for their own and others' liberations, and finally, working to change policies and structures that support the oppression of people with disabilities. So I know this was a lot that I just mentioned to you here, but the point I want to make is that Here we can see how disability can be seen instead of a medical condition as rather a political and cultural identity. So now at this point, I would like to give you all some practical suggestions on the types of things you can do within your own educational practice to assist students with disabilities. So the first thing I want to tell you is that although I just gave you a lot of technical pieces from the literature, I also want to share with you that as long as you're acting with goodwill, kindness, and compassion, that is the most important. And, that's really going to go a long way. But I just wanted to provide you with some advice around things that you can do in working with disabled students to make their lives and their school experiences better. So the first, no change is ever too small. I can tell you that some of the most memorable experiences I've ever had in terms of changes being made were educators and teachers, setting up the classroom in a way where I could move about freely and independently in my surroundings. Even if this was not an option due to limited space, they would often ask me, where should I put your desk so it's easiest for you to get to and work from? And I can tell you that this consideration of my needs was very meaningful, as it made me feel valued. The second thing, listen to disabled students and their support networks, whether they be family, or the individual themselves, or personal support workers. They are the experts. They have encountered and found innovative ways to overcome so many challenges that they often have the answers to your concerns before you even know that you have them. And approaching them this way makes the learning process something that you can learn from as well, and will hopefully give you pieces of information that you can carry with you as you move through your careers. After all, I always think that learning is best when it's reciprocal. Developing a rapport with your students is absolutely crucial, because having this type of open and honest dialogue based on mutual respect and understanding will allow the student to feel comfortable in voicing their thoughts on strategies they found helpful and those that presented challenges. It may also make it easier for them to focus on and engage in material and participate in classroom activities, because they may be more relaxed, knowing that they don't have to face these obstacles alone. And I can tell you that some of my favorite educators within my time were educators who challenged me the most. You know, don't be afraid to challenge your disabled students, because you might surprise not only yourself, but also the students with how much they are capable of. In doing this, it may also help them to develop needed skills such as determination and perseverance that they can use when overcoming obstacles throughout their when overcoming or negotiating, I should say, obstacles throughout their educational careers and beyond. This is one I always smile at. If you don't know something, please ask. Chances are, you know, if you don't know, we as the disabled students don't know, and we can also tell that you don't know. So it would just be honest and upfront, and just let us know that you're not sure, but you're working to figure it out. This authenticity only serves to strengthen the rapport that you have with your students. And lastly, if you remember nothing else that I've said today, please do me a favor and remember this. Recognize that your mere presence in your students' lives is a gift. You know, some of the most memorable moments that I've had as a student is when teachers have gone out of their way to say, "Hi, how's it going? How was your day today?" Those experiences made me feel seen, heard, and valued. And that will go leaps and bounds for you. Um, so I also want you to remember that as you work with your students, I have no doubt that you will make a tremendous impact in all the lives that you touch. I want to thank you again for spending some time with me today, and I hope that this has helped somewhat. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll just flip through the references for you so that you have them. Okay. That's it for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Melissa. That was awesome. So yeah, guys, if you have any questions for Melissa, you can just send them through the chat. If no one has a question right now, I actually had a question for you, Melissa.
Sure.
At the beginning, you were kind of talking about some of the barriers for students in terms of like their schooling. And you mentioned standardized testing. And that made me think of like the literacy test, like, you know, the test that is required for like graduating high school. So how would a teacher go about assisting a disabled student in that, or just kind of like what is the process for that?
Well, from my perspective, it's always best, if possible, to involve the student in any conversations that are being had in regards to their abilities to do something or not to do something, or if that's not possible, their families or other sources of support, because that goes a long way. And often students are very thankful to have these opportunities to address issues, concerns, because they often have many of the same ones, you know. And so I would just suggest to be open and honest and have that sort of fluid dialogue with the students, as that will go a long way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. So we're getting some questions in the chat here. So one of the questions is, what are some things we can do as teachers to reduce barriers for students with disabilities?
Oh, good question. Now, not all changes are going to require something as big as a ramp at the front of a school. Now, some changes might require investing in some things such as assistive technology for the student. Like I said, moving classroom equipment and furniture around goes a long way, especially if you're working with students who use mobility devices. That's what causes a lot of anxiety, is having to navigate around those types of things. And also, I think just checking in with your students and seeing if they need anything done or any additional support, that goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Thanks, Melissa. Another question we have here is, what are good ways we can deter bullying of students with disabilities by other students in the classroom?
Well, I think just leading by example. The tenets of the social justice model I mentioned are access to resources and recognition. So keeping in mind that equity doesn't always equal equality, right? And that some students with disabilities might have to do some things differently, but they can still end up with the same achievements, right? And I think by leading by that example and making sure that students are recognized, I think that will go a long way as well. But also being assertive when you need to, because students may be afraid to speak up as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And humor always works really well too, especially with students who are being bullied. It will go a long way.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to come off mic as well if you guys like, or just send them in the chat too. All right, here's one. You had mentioned that a student didn't realize that you could speak. Was this because the student didn't pay attention, or was there something the teacher could have done to include your voice and input more directly in the classroom and with peers?
No, I think that this has just been a product of my life, which has been educating people on the fact that people with disabilities have the same aspirations, needs, wants as those without disabilities, And I think as I said, although these experiences were indeed frustrating, they also taught me a lot and have served me well in my career as a disability advocate, social worker, and now educator. Because I recognize that when things like this happen, they are frustrating, but it's out of ignorance. So I always think when people know better, they do better. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what does it look like to be an advocate for students with disabilities as a teacher?
So an advocate for your students with disabilities as a teacher would be taking your students or their networks of support, concerns, or issues into account, while also understanding the constraints that you might be under as educators, and being able to communicate that the need for additional supports, if possible, or if not possible, then communicating that to your students in a clear manner. Because the understanding, although those conversations will most certainly be hard, the understanding that is gained from that will go a long way.
Yeah, for sure. And what's something we can do with younger students, so like the elementary age, that could help reduce attitudinal discrimination?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question, because I was just thinking last night as I was going over this presentation that one of the big things that happened in my household was story time. And I know that happens in a lot of schools for the younger grades. And I had one of the greatest moments for me was my mother found a book with a child in a wheelchair. And, it was talking about the child going to school, and, the fact that the child had to use the ramp, but it just needed they just needed a little bit of assistance to do things, and they could, be a part of the classroom community. And I was probably 4 or 5, but I remember thinking, like, this was the first time that I've ever seen a character in a book that looked like me. So seeing those types of representation, the possibilities that can come from that are boundless. So just little things like that go a long way.
Yeah, definitely.
Just sort of, when planning activities, try to plan sort of alternate ways of completing the activity if you know that you have students with disabilities within your classrooms, because that will help a lot as well.
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. I was actually going to ask about certain literature, anything that was more representative of people with disabilities. So that's awesome that you mentioned that. Do you remember the title of that book, Melissa?
I don't actually. I think it might have been like it was like the 90s. So I think the book was part of the Berenstain Bears or something.
Oh, okay.
And it was called A Very Special Little Critter, I
Mhm.
think was the name of the book.
Okay,
This
awesome.
was the early 90s, right? So that was sort of the terminology that was common in literature.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Awesome. Great. So we're just about at 10 o'clock here. If nobody has any other questions, because I know some people have a session to get to at 10. I think that's all we have for today. Melissa, any final comments that you'd like to mention?
Just thanks so much for having me. And if you have thought of a question that you need answers to that you forgot to ask me or didn't get a chance to, you can always email me.
Okay, sounds good. I can always put your email in the chat if that's all right with you, Melissa.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
would people like that? Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Melissa. This was amazing.
My pleasure.
A lot of people are saying thank you in the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat, but
Oh,
there's
no,
lots of
I
thank
can't
yous
see
coming
it, but
in.
you're welcome. Okay.
Awesome. I'm just pulling up your email here for anybody who would like it. Here we go. There it is. Yeah, thank you, Melissa. This was super informative. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for sharing your experiences. That was great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for sharing your stories and knowledge with us. Yeah, everybody is very thankful that you were here with us today.
I'm so thankful as well. Hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Yes, same to you, Melissa.
All right.
Definitely. Hopefully we can have you back next year, and maybe that would be in person.
Wonderful.
Wouldn't that be great, hey?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye.
All right. I just got to figure out how to end this recording.
I do too. Let's see.
You might have something at the top of your screen that would say like stop share or something like that.
There we go.
And I also had lots of good messages about people. Talking about Freya. They were very excited to see her. Your pictures. A friend of mine was like texting me and she was like, I would quite literally die for Freya. And I'm like, I think we all feel that way.
Aww.